Hey everybody, it's Tao at the Forge. Today I want to talk about Jumpstart. And I've been playing a lot of Jumpstart on Arena. If you've been watching my channel, you'll know that I've been saying it's probably the best thing to play right now. And I actually really like this idea. I think it's good for new players and old players, just because it helps you to actually build your collection. But also for new players, a common thing is that it's hard to balance the play level of each deck. So like a lot of times a new player, they'll have like some sort of intro deck or something, and then they play against another opponent and they just get blown out. But with Jumpstart, because both players are both playing these Jumpstart decks, it's less likely that you get blown out just because someone has more money or just because you have like a better constructed pool. Right, and so like for instance, when I play against new players, I very commonly will ask them like, "What deck are you playing?" Right, and I think sometimes they're a little bit suspicious, and they'll say like, why do you want to know? And the reason why, and I'll tell them, is because I want to select a deck that is actually at a competitive power level. Right, so if they say they're playing like some with just some cards they made from home, like from whatever they had at home, then I'll pick like a tier 3 type homebrew type deck that I have as well. Right, but if they're saying I'm playing like 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 a full-on Jund deck or some some whatever deck, I won't necessarily choose. Like if they're playing a tier 1 deck, I'm not necessarily going to choose like the foil deck that's going to beat them. Like I mean, like a shutdown deck that will just beat them, but I'll choose something that can compete with them so they can actually have a good time playing. And I think that's important for everybody. But I think Jumpstart actually helps to kind of alleviate that problem while still helping you to build a collection in a meaningful way. Now, I've actually opened up one and another, like so one whole booster box of Jumpstart and another 1/3 of one. And so far, I've only had 3 or 4 duplicate packs. Now, that doesn't mean like I may have had like more than one Angels pack, but I've not received. I've only had 3 or 4 that were the exact same Angels, right? So I may have had like Angels 1 and Angels 2, but I only got like a duplicate like 3 or 4 times out of like 30 some odd packs. So that's actually pretty good. I'm quite pleased by by the diversity in there. However, I still have yet to get Planeswalker one. But I did get the Crater Hoop Behemoth Elves one, so that's actually pretty good as well. Now, one of the things is that you can actually just tear these apart and use them in your regular collection, but that's not really what everyone wants to do with it. So like a lot of times people are like, well, what am I going to do with all these cards? Well, what you can do, besides just adding them to your collection, well, there's a couple things you can do, and I'm going to go over that here. So the first thing I do is I actually take out the land. Right, so in each one of the actual paper boosters, there is a special land that goes like with the theme. So with the dragons one, there's a dragon land. With the vampires one, there's a vampire land. With the spooky one, there's like an eyeball land and like the eyeball swamp and stuff like that. What I do is I take out that land and I just sleeve it because I feel like that could actually go in your trade binder. Now, a lot of times people, they might have like a vampire deck, or especially in Commander or something like that, and they might want to get all those vampire lands, right? Especially, all the vampire swamps, and because Jumpstart will be actually, it's going to be a print to demand, so it's not like any limit to it. So I think these will be fairly common. But when you're doing some trading, that could be like the one little thing that might sweeten the deal. Is like, if there's a little bit of discrepancy, you can say like, hey, I'll throw in this extra land or whatever. And there could be some people willing to trade, a fairly decent amount. I'm not talking like $30 or anything like that, but they might be willing to trade you like, like a $2, $3 card, for one of those lands, depending on what it is. Same thing with the thriving lands. If you want to trade the thriving lands away, I'm doing that with the duplicates, but not with the originals. All right, not with any ones that I have that are not duplicates. All right. So, anyways, what I do is I put out just a regular basic land in for the to replace the special land that's in there, and then I'm adding the other one to the trade binder. Right, so the other thing that I'm doing though is now, like once I trade out the land, I still have the intact deck. So what I have been doing is I'm building a Jumpstart queue, and the way you do this is you actually just kind of repack it. right? And I got into a Kickstarter that has these repacks, but actually Cubamajigs actually makes them still. All right, so it's, I got the Kickstarter with Cubamajigs, and I'm putting them on the screen here, and you can see what they have is like it's a little plastic pack that's pretty easy to assemble. You can get all sorts of different artwork on it, and yeah, like then basically what you can do is you can just like these are basically ways of resealing your decks. Now, for Jumpstart, because it's 20 cards, you can't double sleeve, but they can be single sleeved and put into one pack. And yeah, then you can basically repack it and put it in and make the pack again. Then you put it into your cube box, and then when people are playing, they just grab 2 or 4 packs at random, however you want. They get to choose and like slap together. I think the way you were supposed to play is you take 4 packs at random, open them all up, and then put any two together for the first game, and any 2 together for this, and then your remaining 2 together for the second game. So like let's say for instance I got like angels, elves, devils, and dogs, right? So if I did like angels and devils for the first match, and the second match would be have to be like elves and dogs, right? So but these repacks are actually pretty good, and they're decently priced, and you can just keep using them over and over again, right? So it's not like you just tear them open like a paper pack or something like that. So like you can just repack them over and over again, and they last like quite a while. I have a couple cubes like cubed up or packed up like this with them, and you know, it actually makes things a lot nicer. It is a little bit of work to pack them all the cards up, but I mean, it makes the whole cube experience a little more fun. All right, now what I have also done though is on top of the packs I already have, I also have a whole bunch of like other cards that are just sitting around, like, you know, especially from older sets. Like, you know, I started playing in M14 and Theros and stuff like that, but I've got like a whole bunch of cards still, like from Ixalan and Return to Ravnica and stuff, like, and not Return to Ravnica, and like the Return to Innistrad and stuff like that. You know, I've got cards from Amonkhet and Kaladesh and stuff like that. So like, what do you do with all those cards? Well, what you can do is you can actually start making your own Jumpstart decks, and that's what I'm doing. That's what I've been doing. So the video today is going to be talking about new Jumpstart decks that I put together. Okay, and so I'll put links to these, and so you can see here I put it together some Jumpstart decks, and I'll show you what I built, and let me know what you think. Like, is it too much? Are they too powerful? I don't think they are, with the exception of one, but yeah, I'll show you guys what I've done. So I went and looked, and I had just went through some boxes, and I had a whole bunch of pirates. I noticed that the pirates are all blue from Jumpstart, so it's all blue pirates. So what I did is I made mono black pirates. Yeah, so we got Grasping Scoundrel, Dire Fleet Poisoner, which is a Death Touch, Fathom Fleet Captain, right? It makes a 2/2. So if you control another, whenever he attacks, you can make another 2/2 black pirate creature token with Menace. You know, Wanted Scoundrels, Fathom Fleet Border, which is pretty good. Forerunner of the Coalition, helps you find one of them. Ruin Raider, Tomb Robber. Right, so I mean, I feel like I've done okay with this, and Dire Fleet Interloper. Now, the basic recipe for a Jumpstart deck is going to be 7 to 9 creatures, and then usually about 9 lands, and then the rest is supposed to be spells. Now, I've got one too many in this one, so I didn't realize that. Actually, I have to take one out. All right, so I will have to actually go back and correct this. But yeah, I'll probably take, I don't know, maybe Dire Fleet Interloper seems to be pretty good. I don't know. I'll have to find one to take out. One of these. I'll have to look a little more carefully. Maybe Grasping Scoundrel. Right now, but the only problem is that leaves us with no turn 1 play, but that's probably where I'll end up going. Okay, so as you can see, it was just like half a second for you, but for me, I just went in and I took out the Grasping Scoundrel, and there you go. You got mono black pirates to add to your Jumpstart decks. Right? Let's go back. So let's see, we got mono red pirates. So I made a mono red pirates one. So we got the Fanatical Firebrand, Dire Fleet Daredevil, Fathom Fleet Firebrand, Goblin Trailblazer, Headstrong Brute, Swaggering Corsair, Stormfleet Arsonist, Stormfleet Pyromancer, and then this one only has 8 creatures, but it does have 4 for spells, and these are actually quite good ones, I think. Anyway, so you got Mutiny. Target creature an opponent controls deals damage equal to power of another. Do its power to another target creature that player controls. So basically, two of your opponent's creatures have to fight. Not quite fight, but one of them deals damage to another one. So if they put out a big beater or something, they got two big beaters, you can make it into one big beater for 1 mana, right? Buccaneer's Bravado, right? So it gives your creatures first strike, or it can give it double strike. So especially because basically all your creatures are pirates, you can give them, you're never going to give them just first strike, right? You're going to go +1/+1 and double strike. And especially towards the end, like, because you're so aggressive, like you could go in, if you give Stormfleet Arsonist like double strike, right? Yeah, that could be so brutal, right? Like, because you're doing like 8 damage, or it would be 5 +1/+1, right? So it'd be 10 damage, right? That could easily finish the game, right? Then we've got Lightning Strike and Unfriendly Fire, right? So all commons, but still I think pretty good. Now, when you're building these decks, you got to have an eye towards balance, because it's probably possible to put together something that's totally brutal against your opponent, right? So you know that just unbalances all the other decks. So you have to think towards like the power level of a Jumpstart deck, right? So anyways, you got Jumpstart. Artifacts. So this one is all artifacts, and they're all just blue. I know Arcanist Owl is blue and white, but I just put only blue in here. Okay, so I got Vantress Gargoyle, so it's a pretty good one. Now, your opponent has to have 7 or more cards in their graveyard, and it can't block unless you have 4 or more cards in your hand. That actually shouldn't be too hard, so you get a good blocker out of it, but it won't be a while until you can actually attack with it. Shambling Suit. So it's equal to the number of artifacts or enchantments you control. So you're going to have possibly a ton of enchantments or of artifacts, because the whole deck is all artifacts. Now, I did consider putting artifact lands, like so putting the artifact islands in, but the artifact islands I think would have made this too much, right? Because Shambling Suit like costs 3. Now, if that means that if you only put him out, you would have like the Shambling Suit and also 3 artifact lands, so this would come out as a 4/3, right? So I think that would be like kind of a little bit overpowered with the artifact lands, and it actually goes along with some of these other things as well. So the Thaumaturge Familiar is a flying, okay, you get to scry with it. Arcanist Owl, you can reveal an artifact or enchantment from top 4 cards and put it into your hand, right? Solemn Simulacrum, again, puts like a basic land. So if you got the Solemn Simulacrum out and you had artifact lands, I think that would be like, again, just a little bit overpowered. So that's why I didn't include them, right? And then Mirror Enforcer, especially because you'd be able to put a 4/4 down super fast. I think too fast. So I feel like this is probably okay. I'd have to play test it for a bit and see like how it ended up working out. If it wasn't too bad, then you could also ramp up the power by putting those artifact islands in here. All right, then on top of that, we got Mantle of Tides, right? So it's just you can equip it to a creature for +1/+2, and then whenever you draw your second card each turn, attach Mantle of Tides to target creature you control. That actually works out well, because you could go like, for instance, turn 1 Mantle of Tides and put that down, and then eventually put down like something, I don't know, like a Thaumaturge Familiar or Shambling Suit, and then when you play Prophetic Prism here, wherever it is, then you can draw a card. Right, when you draw a card, then Mantle of Tides helps you, just attaches to a target creature you control. I also put down Skull Clamp. So equipped creature gets +1/-1 whenever equipped creature dies or draw 2 cards. So you can attach this to one of your creatures, block with it. If it dies, then you get to draw 2 cards out of it. And then again, you can, whenever you do that, then you can equip Mantle of Tides to something else. Okay, Cobbled Wings is just an interesting one. It's just to give one of your creatures flying. All right, that could be a decent finisher, and it's only 2 mana to get out, 1 mana to equip. Right, and then after that we have 1 Weapons Rack, and that's just a way to kind of slowly power up your creatures. Right, so I don't think this is overpowered, but I think there would be ways to potentially overpower it if you wanted to. Right, okay. I'm going to skip this. Well, actually, let's go to this. Borrow Soldiers, I feel like might be overpowered. All right, so what I did is I put in a Fresh-Faced Recruit, Thalia's Lieutenant. Now, Thalia's Lieutenant says whenever she enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each other human you control. Now, all of these soldiers, I believe, are humans. I believe so. Anyway, so human, 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 human. Yeah, except, yeah, they're all humans. Okay, so these are all human soldiers. So basically, you can put a +1/+1 counter on each one of your creatures here. But when another human enters the battlefield under your control, you can put a +1/+1 counter on Thalia's Lieutenant, right? And that goes for everything else here. Then we've got Hero of the Games, right? So whenever you cast a spell that targets him, creatures you control get +1/+0 till end of turn. Hero of the Nyxborn, basically the same thing. You cast a spell that targets Hero of the Nyxborn, they get +1/+0 till end of turn. When he enters the battlefield, though, you get another human, right? So that also would trigger Thalia's Lieutenant. Okay, the Wojak Bodyguard has Mentor as well. Can't attack or block alone, but it's a 3/3 for 3 with Mentor. And then after that, we got an enchantment, Trapped in the Tower. That's just to kind of block one of your opponent's, like to stop one of your opponent's creatures. We got Aspect of Manticore, which you could flash in. Now, this could actually be pretty good because you can enchant your creature, especially Wojak Bodyguard, and give him Mentor, especially if the other ones have ramped up. All right, Irawa's Blessing is again pretty good because not only does it can you put it in, you can enchant your creature, give them +1/+1, but it also deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. So this one can be a form of removal as well. And I think the real kicker here, a really good card that fits well, is this Outlaw's Merriment, right? So Outlaw's Merriment, just every beginning of every turn, you just get a random creature, and I feel like this one could be, you know, kind of too much. Like, so I don't know. What do you think? Do you think Outlaw's Merriment is too much for this deck? Because basically you're giving someone like a new creature every single turn once they get this down, right? The other one I kind of skipped over is talking about Silverflame Squire. Now, Silverflame Squire, I feel like, is a really, really good card because it's basically 2 cards. Right now, a lot of these guys, like the 2 heroes, Hero of the Game, Hero of Nyxborn, they get bonuses whenever you target them with a spell, right? But here you've got some instants, target creature gets +2/+2 till end of turn, and you untap it, right? So basically it's going to give them pseudo vigilance if they attack, and all your other creatures get +1/+1, right? So I mean, is it too much, right? And then the next turn you could put this down again and bring out another human soldier. So I don't know. I feel like I may have overpowered this. Now, I did try to slow it down by putting in 4 Windscarred Crags, right? So the Windscarred Crag is a tapped land, so this deck is pretty powerful, but it has to play all its lands tapped. Well, most of its lands tapped, right? So I feel like that was the way I could kind of slow this down and give other decks a chance to kind of play it out. But still, not sure overall if this might be too much. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so after that, after Boros Soldiers, I went to Merfolk. I felt like because I had a lot of Ixalan cards, Merfolk might be a good one to kind of work with. So I went to Merfolk and decided and saw what I could do with that. So let's wait for this to connect and go in. Alright, so there we go. So with Merfolk, we've got Mistcloak Herald, which is a 1/1 unblockable, right? So wait for this to finish loading. There we go. So Mistcloak Herald, 1/1 for 1, can't be blocked. A Lord of Atlantis, so all Merfolk get +1/+1 and have Island Walk. I just actually happen to have this laying around, so I thought it'd be a good include. Silvergill Adept, basically you can reveal a Merfolk and you get to, it just replaces itself, so it's a Merfolk that allows you to draw a card when it comes into play. Cold-Eyed Selkie, this one's an interesting one because it has Island Walk, but whenever Cold-Eyed Selkie deals combat damage to a player, you may draw that many cards, right? Merfolk Sovereign, so other Merfolk you control get +1/+1, and then you could also tap it to make a Merfolk unblockable. Ideally, you'd use that on your Cold-Eyed Selkie, right? Miro Regiray, so whenever you play a Merfolk spell, you may tap or untap target permanent. A Rootwater Hunter, can tap to deal 1 damage to target creature or player, and a Scroll Thief, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, again draw a card. So I thought like overall these would be, you know, a pretty good mix. There's 8 of them. Again, I feel like this is actually pretty powerful in the world of Jumpstart, right? But because you have to mix it with another deck, you might not actually get all the Merfolk, right, that you need. So, you know, it could be a little bit rough. Okay, but still, then there's 9 islands, 1 claustrophobia, and then the claustrophobia is just basically tap in target enchanted creature, just doesn't untap, so it's a way of taking out one of your opponents. Then we got Crashing Tide. Has flash as long as you control a Merfolk, and return target creature to its owner's hand. Right, so now you're probably always going to have a Merfolk with this, you know, but then you can return a target creature to its opponent's hand and then also draw a card from it. So I thought that that was okay. And then Essence Scatter. So I feel like this is a pretty good, fairly balanced one. A lot of the Jumpstart decks have like a huge bomb. None of these guys are really huge bombs. Right, like, you know, eventually they're gonna kind of get through, like, because especially if your opponent is playing islands, maybe a good one to play would be like, I forget, there is a card that can enchant a land to make it into an island, but I felt like that would just be taking up one spot that wasn't really necessary. And then I don't know, I feel like this could, you know, this could be pretty good, but not necessarily overpowered. Okay, anyways, yeah, let's move on. So we got Jumpstart Merfolk, and then the last one was Jumpstart Mono Green. It says auras, but it should say enchantments. So I'll go change that in just a moment here. Okay, actually I did change it, it just didn't change on the other page. Okay, that's weird. Okay, so we got Mono Green enchantments. Now, this one again, I feel like I may have overdone it, but I'm not sure. Okay, so we got 2 Destiny Spinners, which is a 2 mana 2/3, and it says creature and enchantment spells you control can't be countered. All right, so that already I think is pretty strong. Right. Later on, you can change a target land into an XX elemental creature token, where X is the number of enchantments you control, and it's still a land. Right now, yeah, and it's just until end of turn. Right. Okay. Let's see, then we got 2 Setessan Skirmishers. So again, whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, Setessan Skirmisher gets +1/+1 till end of turn. So instead of a 2/1, it becomes a 3/2. So again, pretty good. Now keep in mind everything here in this deck, except for the 2 Setessan Skirmishers and the champion, are all enchantments. Okay, or actually besides all the creatures, right? So then we got Nexus Wardens. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under control, you gain 2 life. Right, yeah, this Destiny Spinner is an enchantment. Setessan Champion is not an enchantment, but whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on him and draw a card. So he's going to get pretty big pretty fast. We got a Nyxborn Colossus, which is an enchantment creature, a 6/7 for 6, just a generic one, but this could be like a total killer once you finally get it down. Right, then after that we've got Setessan Training. Now, Setessan Training is enchant creature you control for 2. When Setessan Training enters the battlefield, you draw a card. So it replaces itself, and then you also get +1/+0, and it has Trample. Right? So then we got Warbuyer's Blessing. This is a form of removal. So if whenever you enchant a target creature, it gets +0/+2, but it also fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. We got Omen of the Hunt, so a flash enchantment. When Omen of the Hunt enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. Right, so a little bit of ramp, a little, you know, we can cast it for, you know, cheap on our opponent's turn if we really need to. I don't know how often you would actually use this. I guess if you're really kind of mana screwed, you might use this. But then we got Hydra's Growth. Now, Hydra's Growth might be too much, right? We got a 2 of, and when Hydra's Growth enters the battlefield, you got to put a +1/+1 counter on an enchanted creature. But then at the beginning of your upkeep, you double the number of +1/+1 counters on that creature. So it gets, first it starts off as a 1/1, a +1/+1, but then it goes to a 2, then 4, then 8. And so this could actually close out the game very fast, right? Especially if you put it on like let's say for instance you've got Setessan Champion, but you also have, like, I don't know, like Nexus Wardens, right? So, you know, if you cast this Hydra's Growth, then Setessan Champion is going to get a +1/+1, but then it's also going to draw a card, right? But then your Nexus Warden is also another threat, so your Setessan Champion will be growing every time you cast an enchantment, but then your Nexus Warden's also giving you 2 life and also growing as well. And so it's going to make multiple, could potentially make multiple creatures for your opponent to deal with or multiple threats. So I think, I don't know, Hydra's growth might be too much, but I feel like it being only an uncommon, and I don't know, it just depends, I guess. I'll have to play test it and see how well it does. So again, that is it. That's as far as I got in building my own Jumpstart decks. But yeah, if you have any thoughts on if any of these are overpowered or underpowered, or if you have ideas for different Jumpstart decks that you would like to see, let me know in the comments, and I'd love to try and put them together. I think making new a whole Jumpstart cube where you just have all these different themes, like it could be like, I don't know, like ninjas or trolls or animals or something like that. It could be kind of neat. So anyways, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in next video.